And now a look at the weather, and tonight most of Britain will have another overcast night with patches of mist or fog. There'll be outbreaks of rain in northwestern parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the chance of sleet or snow on the hills. Tomorrow the cloud and rain will spread to the rest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, becoming brighter later. The dull weather will continue elsewhere. And the outlook is for more changeable weather, with rain on Saturday followed by sunshine and showers.
One of Britain's most talented and best-loved satirical comedians has died. Willie Rushton, who was 59, became ill after undergoing heart surgery. He appeared on television in the 1960s show That Was the Week That Was, and co-founded the magazine Private Eye, coming to symbolise the anti-establishment satire of the time. Later he also became celebrated as a brilliant writer and cartoonist. Colleagues described him as a very, very funny man who'd been universally loved. Nicholas Glass looks back at his career.
Willie Rushton was many things: cartoonist, illustrator, actor, novelist, children's author and wit. He was famously a fat man who got slim, but crucially he was simply funny and likeable, the sort of entertaining companion anyone might easily have a drink with. He'd been part of the English comic landscape for almost 40 years, starting out on its surreal, satirical edge in the early 60s.
Well, Willie Rushton was one of that gang of Shrewsbury schoolboys. Him, Christopher Booker, Richard Ingrams and Paul Foote, who set up Private Eye and made it work from the 60s onwards. He, of course, was an extraordinary cartoonist. I mean, right from the word go. And he was particularly brilliant at political caricature. Nearly all the figures in public life from the 60s, 70s and 80s were done by Willie, and done, I think, as well as anyone else has done them.
As a cartoonist, Rushton was in eminent company. Scarfe, Stedman and Trogg, to name a few, but he more than held his own. He was a gifted caricaturist. You could almost hear his own voice mimicking the characters he drew. At the London Cartoon Gallery, where he sold his work, he had a room to himself. He seems to have been able to draw virtually anyone.
This has always been Willie's room since the shop opened in 1994. And he came in for our opening party and settled himself down on a little chair in the middle and fondly recalled it as his grotto.
And how will he be remembered at this cartoon gallery?
Very fondly jovial Santa Claus, and of some reading. When I was a child, he used to read the Winnie the Pooh stories, and the voice of Eeyore is how I'll remember him.
Rushton was a regular on the 60s satirical show That Was the Week That Was as a writer and performer.
Tuesday night, an undergraduate's production of Espresso Bongo opened in Cambridge. The proctor, Mr. Richard Bainbridge, who has to approve all university shows, watched the dress rehearsal, if that's the right term. And in one scene, 4 girls posed nude from the waist up. Mr. Bainbridge said afterwards, "Frankly, I prefer Shakespeare." Well, your wish is our command.
The cast of TW3, once for the purposes of a sketch that I had to produce, had a race, and there were lots of lissom lads like Lance Percival and Al Mancini, and not so lissom ones like Roy Kinnear. So the surprising winner of the race was Willie Rushton, but it is true that he gave up alcohol because he contracted diabetes, and he became slimmer then, but no more athletic.
You're going to start, Willie, and I'd like you to suggest some extracts from a sequel to Moby Dick, as written by Raymond Chandler.
When I came round, I was lying face down on the beach at Santa Barbara. Then I heard a voice. "I'm looking for a private dick," she said. I looked up. She was beautiful. Her body shimmered like fish skin. She had lips like Andrew Lloyd Webber and gills like Prince Charles.
Willie Rushton always retained an essential Englishness. He loved cricket, for example, and off and on the field, he made a lot of Englishmen and others laugh.
Nicholas Glass. Well, we're joined here in the studio by the humorist John Wells, who's worked with Willie Rushton throughout his long and varied career. I mean, he was part of an absolutely brilliant team. What do you think set him apart from the rest?
Well, I think his absolute genuineness, Willie. I mean, whenever you saw Willie, he was always grinning, and he gave you a great wave, and he immediately started being very, very funny. But he did it to absolutely everybody. And you saw him in the street in Kensington. Anybody came up and asked him the time or said, "Are you Willie Rushton, or do you have to rehearse?" and things. He'd never, waste any time think that was what he liked doing. He loved just being himself and being tremendously funny. And I think he was unlike other people, and he was absolutely genuinely popular. He really loved the public.
In a sense, he, and you for that matter, and the rest of you, were very, very lucky to live between Macmillan and Major. I mean, weren't you?
Well, I hadn't thought of that, really. I mean, I think
it was a good time to be doing what he was doing, wasn't it?
I mean, it was. We were all launched on this ridiculous satire boom, but Willie was absolutely a real... He wasn't an actor. He wasn't a performer. He just was really like that. Was he politically motivated? I mean, the satire really had a fantastic edge. Yes, I mean, he really... What his great theory on... he was rather Kensingtonian politics, really. He was used to say, let's get the
he was
Tories
a Nick Scott
back.
Man, was he?
He liked Nick Scott. I think that was his ideal of what a Tory should be. But he always used to say, let's get the Tories back and bash them. That was his idea. That was his idea of... Because he did think Tories were very, very funny. Can you distill which of his great talents in the end was the greatest? Because he was a really very fine artist, wasn't he? I think he was a marvellous cartoonist. He was an incredibly good draftsman, and he just loved sitting there. He used to sit there chewing his lower lip, just sketching away on these wonderful pointy feet. And he was a great illustrator. But the fact that he came out in everything, you know, he was constantly bubbling with new ideas. He wanted to do a version of the Odyssey called The Return of Major Odd. He made up songs about Kensington High Street is my street. He did the famous Neasden, where the birds sing in the trees.
Did he invent Neasden?
Oh yes, he certainly invented the song. Well, he invented the song, but he was just sort of so, you know, it would have come out in any form at all. The main thing was that it was absolutely spontaneous, and he was very, very fond of other people. And I can't think of anybody of our generation who's going to be as much missed, because although we're laughing about it, it's the most awful shock that's happened to any of us, because he just seemed the great source of energy, and he had a tremendous courage. He didn't have it easy. And he was always funny, and he always made other people laugh, and he kept going to a pub, the pub would be roaring within 5 minutes. It must be very difficult. I mean, Peter Cook, Roy Kinnear, as was mentioned, and now Willie Rushton, to be part of that tribe and to see them dropping away. Yeah, because we really never appreciated that they got old, you see. We all think we're about 25. Still? We feel that, yes. I mean, we haven't really grown up. But it was... no, I mean, there are still one or two old spectres about, like poor old Richard Ingram's. I didn't have seen him. But, I mean, there are... I mean, it's been... losing Peter and losing Willie is a terrible blow in such a short time. Simply because he seemed such a great source of energy that you never saw him gloomy. He never allowed life to get him down. John Wells, great thing about him. Thank you very, very much for coming in.